Hello and welcome back to No Bullshit. Today we return to talking about one of our least favorite regressive YouTube channels called The Root. Their latest video to catch my eye was called Cardi B, Megan Thee Stallion, and Hip Hop Feminism Explained. Unpack that. Wow, hip hop feminism you say? Coming from the likes of garbage tier artists like Cardi B? Yikes. This should be pretty good video then. Sucks that women in hip hop have lowered their standards so much though. So much so that Cardi B is a leading so-called feminist for hip hop ladies. Bummer. This chick can barely speak English, by the way. Not to mention, she also has a not so flattering track record in history, which we'll get into. Let's first check out some of this video though anyway, and see what The Root has to say for themselves.
Women in hip hop are making a comeback like we've never left. Make room, fellas, because we're taking back the mic. Sauce is dripping, flow immaculate. Hip-hop artists might not be who you think of when we talk about feminism, but these rappers been changing the game. Today's baggage? Hip-hop feminism.
Well, I think women in hip-hop are making a comeback like they never left because they actually never left. There's always been big, famous, prominent black women in American music before it was even completely focused on hip-hop like in the present. Aretha Franklin, Tina Turner, and Diana Ross are some older examples. Not to mention legendaries that came out in the 90s like Whitney Houston and Beyonce, who herself started in the group Destiny's Child. And since then, particularly, Beyonce herself has gone solo and been around singing and mixing into hip-hop this whole entire time. So to say black women in hip-hop are making a comeback is completely false, since they've always been here and have never actually left. And next, to say new artists like Megan Thee Stallion and Cardi B are some kind of new class of black women to look up to is completely ridiculous and terrible. Not only are these no-name artists who barely have any relevance, they're also sometimes despicable people who have done terrible shit and shouldn't be idolized at all. Cardi B, for example, is a former stripper who can barely speak English properly. She was born and raised in New York City though, but she legitimately cannot form coherent sentences. I'm not exaggerating here. And her rise to fame is even more embarrassing than that. Cardi B got out of dancing naked nightly as a stripper by becoming a reality show TV star. She started catfights on TV for a couple years too, but she eventually spun that off into making music, as she likes to call it, or some might call it, but I don't know. That's debatable. And worst of all, since getting world famous, Cardi has gone on to brag about heinous acts like how she used to drug men and steal from them back in the day when she was a broke stripper. That's right, Cardi was pulling some Bill Cosby shit before pulling a Bill Cosby was even a term. But because she's a minority woman, she's not getting scrutinized or jailed here like others, like how you should if you drug and rob someone. No, Cardi is actually getting praised and propped up as a pro-feminist black female icon by the world, including the likes of this Root video and its creators. What a goddamn joke.
It's no secret that hip-hop is wildly misogynistic, homophobic, and very much a young man's sport. Women are often used as collateral damage for petty displays of toxic masculinity. And that's where hip-hop feminism comes in with a clear response. Nah. Female MCs are owning their sexuality, challenging misogyny towards black women, and dismantling homophobic behavior.
I don't really see how these girls are challenging toxic masculinity by dancing outside naked, shaking their butts, and making music videos with stripper poles and shit. I mean, first of all, toxic masculinity isn't really a thing, at least not in the broader, all-encompassing way, meaning all men are toxic. All males and being masculine is not toxic necessarily, but admittedly, there are some negative sides to males, just like how there are for females. And particularly, there are many things negative in the hip-hop and rap communities. We all know they love to rap about hoes and bitches, and drugs and crime and guns and all kinds of stuff. And outside of the songs and for creative purposes, these terms can be negative and highly derogatory. Terms like hoes and bitches, now, girls are trying to embrace them. And that just doesn't make sense to me. Maybe they thought it would work since they did about the same thing with the N-word, but man, really? I don't see any of this working for me. And this whole way they show these new female rappers trying to strip, dance on poles, and shake their butts erratically, this is just making them look worse, not empowered. They look like some of the most scandalous and troubling sluts I've ever seen. Really, in my opinion, this part about being feminist and empowered is total bullshit. These girls are just being skanky and classless because they want to, and it gets them attention from men. But instead of just admitting they're not classy, they do these sorts of mental gymnastics to explain it away and pretend they are classy and honorable and virtuous when really they're not.
Just a basic definition of hip-hop feminism.
It means that we care about the way that male dominance limits our life choices and life possibilities, not just for Black women and Black people, but for Black men too. But we also want to do that to a hip hop soundtrack. So we want to shake our ass. We want to be able to go to the club and party and have a good time.
I think that's better said as you want to have your cake and eat it too. You want to acknowledge the so-called male dominance when you see it, which you seem to resent, but at the same time, you won't stop or deny yourself from being that sexy ass shaker that these dominant males are looking for. It's a weird sort of double thing going on in this lady's head. It's like they want to complain about and condemn Black men while also conforming and adhering to their so-called patriarchy at the same time. It's kind of like these hip-hop women who want to both condemn sexist males while also dancing on stage on stripper poles begging those same males for dollars. It's pretty ridiculous and hypocritical. It makes no sense, but it is admittedly fun to watch The Root and this lady they're interviewing try and justify this bullshit.
There's a generational narrative through which we enter feminism, which is about centering Black and brown folks, which is about saying that Black girls matter, and it's also about taking down all these barriers. So it's not you either a professional, respectable Black girl or you a ratchet Black girl. We say everybody gets to come to the party, and hip hop is the ground upon which we do that.
If you say so, lady. Good to see where your head's at though. Centering Black and brown folks sounds interesting, and an easier way to say that might just be saying let's decenter whites or push them aside, which sounds kind of racist, huh? But this is a segment about Blacks and their experience and history with the hip hop and feminist communities, so you might get a pass for that part. But I certainly don't agree with the ending part she said here. Saying ratchet Black girls get to mix in with classy educated ones doesn't make sense to me. I think this lady in the video are trying to imply something I strongly disagree with. They think trashy sluts get to mix in with classy educated professionals because they are Black. Minorities get a pass on classiness and being a decent person and educated just cuz. And well, I disagree, and I think minorities, they should be treated like everyone else. Now, I'm not saying we need to shame horny women or anything, or horny men for that matter. I'm just saying that there are decent ways to act and go about your life, and then there's very degenerate ones. And if someone grows up to say become a lawyer or doctor or the mayor of a major city, for example, they're not on the same level as some hoe from the Bronx who got naked on stage and robbed men on the weekend by drugging them. Once you go down that low, it's hard to come back from that too, especially if you're still acting up in messed up, trashy ways. Cardi B, for example, she still strips essentially in her music videos and in her skimpy photo shoots. She also beefs with her peers hardcore, even causing fights and getting bruised up faces and beaten up in the process. Not to mention, Cardi B is a mother now too. God damn. Now let's compare her to another prominent Black woman and mother in America. As much as I hate the former president, let's use his wife as a more respectable example anyway. Michelle Obama is a world-renowned lawyer, mother, and former first lady with a prominent track record. Not my cup of tea for sure, but she's certainly a classier lady than Cardi B. And as much as you disagree with the Obamas politically, Michelle admittedly has a pretty squeaky clean record, all things considered. Now, would you guys want to put Cardi B on the same level as Michelle Obama in any situation whatsoever? Because if I'm getting the tone and apologetics of this The Root video, well, if I'm getting them right, you would think they are equals, and Cardi B's hip-hop feminism might save her from her devious past, but in my opinion, that's not true. That's a no-go, not even close. And this is not to shame Cardi B too much or too hardcore either. I have nothing against her personally. I even like a few of her songs, well, the one she's guested on, but I'm also not going to pretend she's this new, changed, pro-feminist hero for the hip-hop community and someone girls should look up to, when really, she's quite the opposite.
Respectability politics has a sort of contentious relationship with hip-hop feminism.
Yeah.
Can you break that down for us?
Yeah, so look, respectability politics was this strategy that Black folks, right after the end of enslavement, they adopted this strategy to get white people to respect them and to see their humanity. And it mattered because white folks were lynching people, Black women were deeply unsafe.
Okay, settle down, lady. Before we get to their eventual black and white photography too, let's just pump the brakes on these slavery comparisons here. I know that's the social justice warrior go-to and an easy way they think they can bash whites, but let's not get too carried away with it, okay? Your topic is modern hip-hop feminism, as you yourselves put it in this video, and their main argument seems to be that new artists like Cardi B and Megan Thee Stallion are Black females making a comeback, in music at least, and their so-called feminism is legitimate and shouldn't be judged on modern standard American grounds. Now, I've gone over the holes in this theory extensively already, but let's now talk about the main conclusion. The way I see it, especially with this post-slavery assimilation of the former slaves comparison, well, ultimately, what the video is going for here is an anti-education, anti-American standards, and anti-modern decency angle too. Think about it. When this professor lady talks about slaves, well, they say those slaves were trying to learn English and become Americans and assimilate into our culture as if it's a bad thing. In their minds, whites are equal to power and education, so they think blacks should have a right to not be educated or classy, but still be treated as if they are, and have people pretend they are honorable when they're not acting that way. Same sorts of whack theories are also being applied to Cardi B when you think about it. The root would have you put Cardi B on the same level as Michelle Obama, if they could, because we have to ignore Cardi's degenerate and sometimes criminal past because she's a black female who didn't do nothing. Reminds me of when other SJWs were anti the English language before in other videos, like one we covered from MTV News, Decoded. That time they were saying blacks should be able to speak Ebonics, as if it were a legitimate professional language or dialect, when really it's not. Ebonics is just ghetto English, basically. But this was another time the SJWs were getting into anti-progress and anti-education and advancement, and that's the same thing they're doing now with Cardi B, and that's also why we call these kinds of liberals regressives. This is the perfect example of why, down to a T.
And so black folks made this gamble. They said, look, we're gonna become excellent, we're gonna get educated, we never gonna commit no crime. Hip hop has prophesied against respectability and called it a lie, and reminded us that Martin Luther King and Malcolm X met the same fate despite the differing kinds of radicalism of both of them.
There's the black and white photography for 100 years ago. Good to know the root is carrying on that tradition from the now fallen and almost defunct MTV News, which we mentioned before. Also, this bit about Malcolm X and Martin Luther King Jr. meeting the same fate, this is not a good message we should get behind. The lady's basically saying all whites are racist who will kill black leaders. So why even try and be nice and peaceful and a pacifist like Martin Luther King? Because he just got shot anyway, so let's all be radical, rebellious, and sometimes violent like Malcolm X. And what the hell are these modern blacks trying to rebel from anyway? It's not the 1950s or 60s anymore. There's no more Jim Crow laws or even much racial discrimination. If anything, blacks are in power and being propped up by the public racially right now, and whites are the ones being discriminated against and attacked. But I guess it's never really enough for people like this. Until every person in any sort of position of power or prestige is a minority, these sorts of racist whiners will never really give up.
One of the people that I think has one of the best feminist analyses in hip hop right now is Cardi B. And I know that people dismiss her a lot because, you know, she also got some shenanigans going on, but that's also the point, right?
Shenanigans is putting it lightly. And just because a woman is famous doesn't mean she's some kind of feminist with analyses. Please, Cardi B hasn't analyzed anything in her entire life, besides maybe all that black dong she's been taking in over the years. But besides that, anyone who goes to or thinks Cardi represents legit hip-hop feminism, you're either completely wrong or you're a fake hack, liar, and fraud like the people making this video. In the end, to make matters even worse here, Cardi B is the type of role model these other blacks really do want to be, the girls in the video and other black women out there. And it's because they don't care about respect or education or being classy or tasteful at all. All these people at the root and other similar ethos care about is fame and money, plain and simple. And these are the most shallow and simplest of goals, which people like this feel they can and should attain at all costs. Even if it means stripping, dancing like a hooker for dollars, or even using your attractiveness to lure in men so you can later drug them and rob them. Yeah, the root and their guests can overlook all of that, and the fighting and backstabbing too, so long as people like Cardi B are about 3 of these things. They have to be black, female, and very popular in one way or the other. That's all it takes to be a black role model these days, and I think that's the perfect explanation as to why this kind of community is going downhill more and more each day. What do you guys think? Is Cardi B respectable? And is she the kind of person that black women should admire? And what about hip-hop feminism? Is that even really a thing? Comment your thoughts on everything below, and thanks for watching No Bullshit. Hit that like button if you enjoyed this video, and we'll see y'all next time.